Welcome back to The Talking Hedge. I'm Josh Kincaid, and this is your Cannabis Business Podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about technology and how that's going to be bringing new types of strains for you specifically, kind of a customized strain, if you will. So we've got a couple of articles, one that dives into how healthcare providers in Canada are turning to technology to use CBD to help find difficult cures for symptoms like dementia. And so you know that once the big pharma gets involved, that a lot of capital is going to start flowing. We've already seen big tobacco, big alcohol get involved. Big industries are going to be getting involved, especially with pharma trying to get specific cures for dementia. CBD has already been known to help with child epilepsy. And so that's been a big push for the kids. And what about the children and CBD and all of that? So a big driver for advocates to try and reduce the amount of seizures on that. But again, it is a capital play. In my opinion, it never was about the kids in terms of the legality. It was always about the revenue that they could make from taxes. But that's the kaleidoscope in which I look through and the Talking Hedge looks through is finance. And so, you know that if Canadian tech companies are getting involved, obviously the government of Canada is getting involved. It's just a matter of time before other people unleash their capital for new technologies to help find cures like dementia. Technology is the second largest investment driver behind multi-state operators and in front of consumption lounges. And within data, we're definitely seeing a lot of people that want accurate dosing, as well as, cures. And so technology is no different. It's going to want to find the best result for you, whether that's curing your epilepsy or your dementia, or just finding the result that you want. And so the Rolling Stones has an article that can DNA tests help you find the best cannabis. And so this is kind of like a 23andMe where they take your DNA and then they give you a specific cannabinoid profile that matches exactly the outcome that you want. I think this is pretty futuristic, but essentially what they do is provide a personalized ratio of cannabinoids and terpenes that align with your genetic profile. So they do kind of make an analogy to 23andMe genetic tests to find Alzheimer's or celiac diseases. They swab for saliva and come up with this strain-specific outcome that's exactly the effects or results that you want. I'm not sure how I feel about that. It feels a little bit invasive, but it is intriguing.
Yeah, there's just so many different ways to go with that, right? There's so many different cans of worms that opens and avenues to discuss.
There's another article that said these shareholders must all be stoned. And so it kind of dives into whether or not some of these investments are worth it. Maybe some of these technologies will work. Most of them probably won't. But the article says that you have to be stoned out of your mind to want to own any of these companies. Basically, what it's saying is that it's called weed for a reason. And that when you have that, it's a commodity. And so everything as a commodity with pricing falls. And so despite the billions in subsidies, there aren't many rich farmers. Agriculture is a terrible business. And so it shows how there's inventory increasing and sales increasing. There's a lot of revenue coming in, but now there's 24 months worth of supply of dried cannabis and 15 months supply of cannabis oil that they're mentioning from the Health Canada. So not as much as what we've seen in Oregon with 6.5 years supply, but what we are seeing is that they're building brands, but they say that the hops and barley in beer are worth less than the aluminum can. So if you have a brand, you no longer have a commodity price if you're building a brand. So it's an interesting point where your margins will go up. The commodity itself is worth nothing. What they're selling is the brand on that can in this analogy.
The topic that we spend so much time on, right, where you're basically looking at that big money. And I'm like, what? $300 million? $100 million? Again, yes, it's a weed. Okay. And part of why we go out and do what we do to learn, to see, to try and validate.
This article wraps up by saying that every new sector always has a similar arc of revenue growth, market share gains, and unprofitability, collapse, bankruptcy, and consolidation. And that cannabis will follow a similar arc where the next cusp of that the collapse phase. So in a couple of years, we can pick up some of the wreckage. That's when the value investors will come in and try to build that back up. right now there is a bubble. There's too many people involved. And we're already seeing a CBD isolate crash second quarter 2019, according to our friends over at Kush.com. In May of 2019, the hemp industry experienced a pricing crash like never seen before. The article goes on to say that over the course of 45 days, the average cost of CBD dropped 30%. There are also indicators that CBD prices will continue to decrease. At the beginning of May, the cost of a single kilo CBD isolate was $6,000. That's 6,000 US dollars. And this dropped by an average price to 5,000 per kilo. Spot prices for kilos are smaller labs where they continue to drop into the 4,000s and upper 3,000s. So the price fluctuation impacts farmers, processors, product manufacturers, but in different ways. So what is driving the price drop? So as CBD buyers, how do you take advantage of the opportunity? Should you lock in those prices with a futures contract? And as a processor or farmer, how do you navigate the plummeting prices and how low can it go?
Look at the cannabis industry and the price per gram and what it's done to, farms and spreadsheets and businesses, and turn right around and be in a place where you thought to yourself, hey, I'm going to grow hemp, right? And I'm going to save myself. Well, if you weren't already growing hemp, your spreadsheets and your price per, kilo, whatever, your yield, again, everybody's growing hemp right now. I can tell you a whole bunch of people who said, no, I'm not going to grow X, I'm growing hemp now. Okay, well, that's a cycle, right? And again, you're going to see it crash further. And this is where figuring out a system where you can, sell when it's high and get out of that market when it's crashed and continues to free fall seems to be the answer. And that means nimble, right? Being nimble.
Right. I had to kind of let a client go. That client wanted to go into a direction of growing and manufacturing hemp in Tennessee. And so that was against, my recommendation. And so it was better for, that client to find an advisor that could get behind that decision. All because of the prices dropping. When everyone wants to jump on board, it's kind of economics 101, where that equilibrium price will match supply and demand. And as some of these bigger manufacturers of CBD have held on in silos to thousands of kilos of inventory, when they do extract and make CBD concentrate, isolate or distillate, or full plant spectrum, either way, it's going to be at a lower price than what these new entrants want to do. It's just economies of scale.
Is it fair to say basically be early and, be right, obviously, or be late? I think we're going to see a national oversupply, frankly. But, it's like, really? So
I think a lot of these hemp producers will also switch to a more rare cannabinoid like CBG, CBN, THCV out of cannabis. And so they'll just get away from CBD in general. And so it makes for an opportunity for buyers to take advantage of the price drop going on to Kush.com or another e-commerce platform. But maybe you should lock in 30, maybe 40% of your CBD needs for the next 6 months with the futures contract, because you never really know what's going to happen. People could just shift gears. It could go dry. So it's a good price, but it could drop even more. And so as a processor, how do you navigate the plummeting prices? If you got into an agricultural industry as a commodity and you didn't see this happening, then you probably should just get out now. I know that's tough love, but if you didn't see it happening, then you weren't paying attention. You should have multiple SKUs, multiple product lines, and those brands should carry that higher margin, not the individual isolate or distillate that's been referred to as hot dog water. You want a full plant spectrum. And that's going to be the way to go. So if you want to shift gears, do full plant spectrum, do a rare cannabinoid like CBN or CBG. And in terms of how low it can go, just like you said, Dan, look at the prices of cannabis going from $30 retail to $15 retail to 7 or 8 cents a gram wholesale. And so it really can hit the floor. I think you'll see isolate and distillate around $1,000 a kilo or a liter within 18 months, easy.
I have looked farmers in the eye who've dealt with the price suppression in the commodity cannabis space, right? Where they were above average to pretty good producers. They weren't able to hold the line on quality. And with things like CBD isolate and distillate, boy, that is tricky to differentiate your CBD isolate from somebody else's isolate. Again, it's a commodity. And, these farmers literally, nobody ever ran a spreadsheet where they're thinking about what happens when I sell my cannabis for, 15 cents a gram, 10 cents a gram. It's crazy.
Right. All the publicly traded Canadian companies are expecting to get over $1.70. And so wrapping up this article from Kush.com, they say that the 2019 harvest is going to have prices as low as $3.50 per pound for biomass, which will drop the floor for CBD to $2,300 a kilo. And in conclusion, the price volatility of CBD indicates that the industry is sensitive to changes in supply and demand. And to recap, the gradual increase in the industry total CBD production mixed with the lack of access to credit card processors resulted in that 30% drop. It shows either that a decrease in demand or increase in supply can quickly move the market. So it's a small precursor to Harvest 2019, where total available materials will double. And so Kush.com fears that the industry has a fierce and unavoidable oversupply problem and two potential solutions that produce wealth and riches. That's the FDA can provide guidance to enabling larger brands and retailers to pursue CBD, and then the USDA opening up import-export so high-quality USDA-grown hemp extract can ship across the world, all of which will increase the commodities pricing, demand, availability. And so I'm looking at a few graphs here where surging investment is funding expansion and scale from New Frontier data. So last year there was $13.8 billion in total investment. $4 billion came from Constellation. $1.8 billion came from Altria. That's Marlboro's parent company. And so about half of last year's $13.8 billion accounted for big alcohol and big tobacco. So we're seeing a little bit of a drop from first-time financing, venture capital activity. And so I think there's a lot of people that aren't jumping in. They're seeing prices of CBD declining, and so they're holding back on first-time investment, moving more towards expanding and scaling up. And so you're seeing deal activity by state increasing, whether it's medical or adult use is going up, but the amount of first timers I think is starting to slow down because of that volatility in regulation and not knowing what the FDA is going to do. But they're still expecting at least 6 to 7 billion in medical sales alone. There's 2.4 million medical cannabis patients this year. 7 billion is expected on the recreational side, with 1.5 billion on hemp. So there's still plenty of money coming in, but I think it's becoming more concentrated and it's becoming more smart. I think with the investment capital that's coming in from institutional investors, it's targeted. They're not just throwing it out as speculation like you're seeing on the stock exchanges with the ETFs and individual securities up there. What you're seeing is a reduction in the amount of first-time financing and more of an increase in scale like we've seen in the multi-state operators going from state to state as a bigger play in the overall economy.
I'm learning something here. I think I just figured something out about how you do this stuff, Chronic. So you've got your reports that go back last year and last month and all of that. And then the whole thing where you're using me out in the field, so you've got reports from like yesterday and, the other night and stuff, right? Here's an example. I was in the field 2 nights ago. I'm at a Fred Meyer, part of the Kroger family, and I saw a CBD point of sale or kiosk, literally wrapped in, buy CBD here, sitting in front of the pharmacy. It's happening in real time, right? If you're shopping at your Fred Meyer 2 days ago, there was no CBD in there. Okay, well, today there is. And again, that kind of market pace, the investors need to know that stuff, right? They got to see that stuff. So
yeah, it should be interesting. There's a lot of end caps at the CVS and Walgreens and Bartels, but nobody really knows anything. You had mentioned offline that when you went to go ask the pharmacist, she said, "Don't ask me any questions. I don't know anything about CBD." And so they're putting all these products on there, but no one knows anything. And so when I went to an adult care facility across from the Bartell Drugs, a local company here, I went in and said, you probably should have some information education about the CBD products when your retirees, your community, are going across the street and buying these CBD products. And she's like, that's a great idea. And then when I brought in a licensed massage therapist who uses cannabis, she mentioned she was really excited about going to this adult care or this retirement community and using cannabis. And so when the director heard the word cannabis, she said, oh no, that's irresponsible. Why would I ever introduce my community to cannabis? And so just the switch of words from CBD to cannabis is an indication that it's a buzzword. People want CBD, but they don't know anything about it. And I don't think there's a difference between investors or the general public at this point. It's all so early. And so when these rare cannabinoids come out like CBG and CBN, hopefully that won't confuse them too much, as well as terpenes and all these other opportunities for the industry to mature and normalize and just become a regular commodity. There's a lot of education that comes behind that's going to be required first, which is a tough sell when you have to educate and then sell. Very, very difficult. It's going to require a lot of capital. And I'm assuming that a lot of that is going to be coming from Canada.
So, first, I actually have a team that I've honed up to go out to senior centers and 50s plus age bracket active communities and essentially survey the community as to what they know about CBD while also representing some different CBD products. And we're doing that as a market test, right? We're doing it to actually see what do these communities know, right? The reality of a market that is moving so rapidly. People are making investment decisions today where this data is relevant. Again, I so enjoy getting in the field and seeing these things, and these things are amazing.
It's quite possible that tomorrow's cannabis could be purchased with technology invested today. So with that, we're going to roll this one up. I'm Josh Kincaid. This is The Talking Hedge. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, or don't, and I'm out.